Let's talk some George Pickens, because we could talk about the hypothetical of Justin Fields and Russell Wilson and what it means for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But there's a bigger hypothetical, a bigger question mark, a bigger what if in this situation. And that is, what the hell is going on with George Pickens? He was outsnapped yesterday by not just Van Jefferson, but Calvin Austin. Finished the game with 3 receptions for 26 yards. He had 7 targets, which is the most amongst receivers, but some of them weren't accurate. One of them was a drop. One of them, you're talking that crossing route that people want to say, and Mark Caboli looked right at me and said, that was a bad throw. I said, no, George Pickens stopped running on that throw. He jogged the entire time. Mike Tomlin, after the game, is asked about the situation and goes, quote, "We just wanted to minimize his reps in an effort to get more productivity. We're just trying to rep manage in terms of the totality of the big picture. He wasn't less of a focal point in terms of our intentions of what we wanted to do offensively." Nick, I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I'll toss it to you first. Do you believe Mike Tomlin at all? And if you do, please explain to me why and where the logic comes from to rep manage, to snap count manage a 23-year-old playing wide receiver, not running back, not defensive line, not anything else, playing wide receiver in his 3rd NFL season, just 5 games into the year.
I know the NBA doesn't start for another week or two, but the load management excuse is not one I thought I'd ever hear from a head coach in the National Football League. I mean, you want quality over quantity with your number 1 wide receiver. I don't think any head coach has ever said that ever, because whenever you have a number 1 receiver, you want quality and quantity. And that's what you should get out of George Pickens. And I understand he had 7 targets. He led the team in targets, but a lot of those were just, all right, Justin's just going to throw it up to him. He's going to run a 9. It was a lot of what we saw last year from George Pickens. It was a lot of what we saw under Matt Canada for George Pickens. It didn't seem like they were scheming anything up to get him open, to get him into space. So as far as they were trying to get better quality out of his opportunities, you could say that was a bold-faced lie by watching the game. I mean, there was no quality looks that were given to George Pickens, but at the same time, you shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
No. You definitely should. And look, if he's in the doghouse, if there's issues going on within that organization and him, I get it, but that means there are no more excuses. There's no more wiggle room. You've now lost 2 in a row, and your best offensive weapon is sitting on the bench. So you got to make a move. If you don't want him here, you get rid of him and you go get somebody else. And there are options. We've been talking about an option for a week now, and I'm not advocating to trade George Pickens. I think that's wild. But if George Pickens is an issue, and an issue enough where the Pittsburgh Steelers have an issue with him, you got to make a move. You don't have time to waste. The worst thing you can do is keep your guy, your number 1 wide receiver, on the bench so that Van Jefferson and company can lead the way as a wide receiver core and do nothing productive in the meantime. There were instances. I mean, George Pickens spent 8 minutes and 32 seconds. I counted. I watched the entire drive. 8 minutes and 32 seconds of a game clock. That's not just 8 minutes and 32 seconds of a game clock. He sat by himself on the bench, not talking to anybody. Meanwhile, Coach Azzani is talking to Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin. George Pickens is walking around. The offense is doing their thing. Justin Fields is walking around. George Pickens is sitting there by himself. And you got to think, what is going on? And then he gets out-repped by everybody on, a crucial drive. The game-winning, the game-leading drive by the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. In 0 worlds does it make sense for Brandon Johnson to be on the field while George Pickens is on the bench on a crucial 2nd down. What are we doing here? This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's something that scares you? For me, it's the obvious ones. Death, loss, failure. Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us, but what about those fears that don't involve zombies and ghosts? Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears while finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. I'm somebody who's benefited from therapy for a long time, and I've been an advocate for therapy for years, and I'm excited to tell you guys about BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/allsteelers today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/allsteelers. There has to be an issue. I don't know what that issue is. Maybe it's George losing his temper last week and Broderick Jones having to calm him down. Maybe it's him ripping the Cowboys defender's face mask and nobody catching that when they definitely should have caught that. Maybe it's just the way he's going about things. Maybe there are issues internally. I have no idea. But for Mike Tomlin to say this is just a rep count, we are just focusing on keeping him limited to load manage, makes no sense and is not the truth. Like, let's be honest. It's not the truth. Mike Tomlin lies to us all the time. That's what he does. These press conferences are half the truth. Do you ever watch Inventing Anna, the movie Inventing Anna?
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning of every episode, it says this entire story is true except for the parts that are completely made up. And that is a Mike Tomlin press conference. He's going to give you something, but he's also going to lie through his teeth for who knows. Could be all of it, could be none of it, could be somewhere in the middle. There is zero chance George Pickens is on a real snap count, and there is a very likely chance that he's in the doghouse. And again, if he is, you move on, and you move on now. You don't wait. You don't try to figure this out. This is 2 years of issues. This is where we sit right now. The Pittsburgh Steelers already need a wide receiver. If your options are keep George Pickens on the bench or go get one, maybe two of them, you go get them. And I'm sorry, but I just don't think they have time to wait where we sit right now.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, do you want to try to fix somebody's attitude, or do you want to try to win football games? And that's what it comes down to. Like, George, we could have the conversation all day that George might have made everybody upset at him. He might have pissed some people off, whatever. You're trying to win football games. You got to put your best player out on the field. And guess what? In that last drive, I understand Brandon Johnson was out there over him on one play. What was the biggest play of that drive? A 20-yard pass to George Pickens, where he also got a unnecessary roughness call that set them up at the 7-yard line. At the end of the day, even if he is not your favorite person, he is your best weapon on offense at the moment, and you do have to utilize him. So we can have that discussion about his attitude and should the Steelers replace him. But as of right now, what you have at your disposal, he is your best weapon. You need to utilize him and utilize him correctly. If you don't, you're going to lose more football games. And at that point, we have to put an even bigger microscope on the coaching, because that is an atrocious decision there by all parties involved.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, that is such a good point. If this is a real logical decision by Mike Tomlin and company, fire him tomorrow. You know what I mean? Don't let him pull a Matt Canada, tell him to come to Rooney's office, let Rooney fire him before he gets to his office tomorrow. Like, that's where we should be if that's a real situation. But it's not. Like, that's how blatantly obvious it is that it's not. And we'll see what happens. I would imagine this is just the beginning, but it's going to boil over and it's going to get bad. And again, the Pittsburgh Steelers, man, they just can't seem to get anything going on their side when it comes to the mental side of things, the controlling your environment side of things. But at the same time, the biggest looming issue right now seems to be two of their top draft picks in Najee Harris and George Pickens. And you just got to wonder, how much cleaner mentally this team is. I know you're not going to get rid of penalties, but how much less distractions come when those two aren't around. And I think maybe the Steelers consider that where we sit currently.